Thank you, friend. Shabbat Shalom. Greetings to you all. Always great to see you. Always fantastic. Now, this week I am on the road, as you can probably tell by looking around. And I'm having a great week, and I hope you're all having a great week, and that you're enjoying your journeys throughout life. We're about to watch an entire generation begin an unprecedented journey. More on that in a moment. Now, I received a lot of comments from people who did not like the feeling of conditionality being placed on the people by God. So they did take a look at things a little bit differently, and they saw that even in sacred writings like the Torah, there were very confusing things. Perhaps some political, and perhaps some even ego-driven. Now, like the great Mickey Newbury song said, I tripped on a cloud and fell 8 miles high. I tore my mind on a jagged sky. I just dropped in to see what condition my conditioner is in. Friends, we are simply used to living and loving conditionally. And it takes great effort to change, but as Yoda would say, change you will. Now, May 24th this year, which is both Bob Dylan's and Archibald Gelman's birthdays, marks the festival of Shavuot, 7, taking place 7 weeks after Passover, and therefore called the Festival of Weeks, and one of the 3 gathering festivals called for in the Torah, and it represents the day that God gave the Torah to the people. Now, the Torah does not tell us that. The Torah simply tells us it is one of the 3 gathering festivals. The Torah exegesis tells us what it represented. When we say it's the day that God gave the Torah to the people, you have to understand, Torah, to us, is a book comprised of multiple writings. Now, its biblical Hebrew meaning is, of course, teaching. The word Torah is for teaching. So it was the day of the Sinai Epiphany, when God announced the 10 Commandments for all to witness. So have a fantastic Festival of Weeks, my friends. The counting of the Omer is complete, and a new counting is about to begin. Bamidbar in the wilderness, the book of Numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4. Can I have a little more? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I love you. Now, I was talking with a few people in the last several weeks about the concept of patrilineal and matrilineal descent and how the Torah was patrilineal. But the religious rules have changed, and it's moved to a matrilineal system. Now, in this parsha, you see the structure, the true structure of membership, the census in the wilderness, which is what this book begins with and why it's called Numbers, illustrates the family structure and relationship of the entire nation of Israel. All the children of Israel were one large family, and the hierarchical family relationships reveal the Bible's patrilineal worldview. Now, the breakdown of the nation into tribe, clan, and household demonstrates the strong central position of the father. The entire nation looked back to one common father. They were the descendants of Jacob. And each Israelite could trace his line of descent to one of the 12 sons of Jacob. That line formed his or her tribal identity. And of course, the 12 sons of Jacob represented the 12 signs of the zodiac. Now, those who were descended from a common father were referred to as a tribe. The 12 sons of Jacob were fathers over the 12 tribes, and the tribes of Israel were further broken down into large extended families. The Hebrew word for family is mishpacha, but when used in the tribal sense, it does not refer to a nuclear family household. It refers to the large extended family of a common forefather within a tribe. And so a better English term would be something like clan. And a clan is like a sub-tribe, a tribe within a tribe. And every clan was composed of many households. And the Hebrew word for a household is Beit Av, a term that literally translates as house of a father. The father's household was composed of himself, his wife or wives, children, and its grandchildren. Now, the common denominator in all these family rankings is the central position of the father. In the biblical world, fatherhood, my friends, was the essential ingredient for family and for identity. In today's day and age, that may be considered somewhat chauvinistic, but the biblical woman regarded her father and her husband as being the means towards her reputation and her identity. They were the affirmation of her femininity. They provided her protection, her sustenance, and her dignity. It's a very different way of thinking than that we have today. And of course, in the past, we've talked about the differences, between biblical times and modern times, and we've talked about the difference in the naming conventions and how they're extremely different between the English and the Hebrew. The English from a theme, and the Hebrew from an early word, usually in the first or second sentence of the parsha. And this book is a perfect example of the difference in the naming convention. It opens with a census, and therefore it is the book of Numbers, but it is really the wilderness story of the Torah, and that is a better name. You know my name. Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. Look up the number. Friends, we are about to read about the most unique generation in history. They were the witnesses to the Epiphany, and they would see and be the recipients of the daily miracles of God for the next 40 years. The first 10 chapters are, by scholarly consensus, the work of priestly writers, and in a certain sense it constitutes a continuation of Leviticus. The 4 initial chapters are taken up with a detailed tabulation of the census of the tribes, number by number, conducted in the wilderness. And this, of course, we know is a pointless exercise, since all of these people are fated to die. It is the story of pomp. And when you read this early section, you know who is emphasized. And when the tabernacle travels, the Levites shall take it down. And when the tabernacle camps, the Levites shall set it up. And an outsider who comes close shall be put to death. And the Levites shall camp around the tabernacle of the testimony, so there will not be a rage on the congregation of the children of Israel. And the Levites shall keep the charge of the tabernacle of the testimony. The Levites are to form a protective barrier and to prevent anyone from violating the tabernacle, its equipment, or its functions. The Levites are cast as a kind of elite corps, a praetorian guard, guarding the sanctuary. And friends, even they have a hierarchy. Only the consecrated Aaronite priests, not all the Levites, may touch or behold the sacred objects. Now, the priestly writer's enthusiasm for pageantry is manifested in this great initial roll call of the tribes, which is picked up in the review of the order of their march through the wilderness and in the elaborately repetitive rehearsal of the gifts of the 12 chieftains. In between these, we're given laws intended to protect cultic purity, with considerable attention devoted to the trial by ordeal of the wife suspected of adultery, and to the Nazirite vows of abstinence, which we will talk about next week, and then the dedication of the Levites and the ritual of the Passover offering. We will be repeatedly reminded of the passing of generations as the story carries us to the border of the Promised Land. After the incident of the spies, the entire adult generation that came out of Egypt is fated to die before the promise of the land can be realized. Moses fails the test of trusting in God's well-prepared intervention when he strikes the rock on his own initiative in order to bring forth water. And as a result, he too will not be privileged to enter the land. Miriam and Aaron die. Moses' impending death on Mount Nebo is announced by God, and Joshua is lined up to succeed him as leader. Now, friends, Israel is on the move from chapter 11 to the end. And it must be said that this text, this book of Numbers, and especially as we get into the beginning of the journey, it tells us that the text is associating movement with trouble. We've just spent a year at the foot of the mountain where there was no movement. Now the movement's about to begin. This is the story of the journey. And after the initial choreographed procession, each of the tribes arrayed in orderly fashion around its own banner, we get repeated representations of a motley crew of malcontents. The Hebrew derogatory, asufsuf, meaning riffraff, is aptly invoked to characterize them. It is a mob churning with complaints and frustrated desires, fidgety under Moses' leadership, fed up with the hardships of life in the wilderness, and nostalgic for the material comforts of life in Egypt. The scheme of the recurrent scene of murmuring, complaint, plays out like this. The people bitterly protest their misery in the wilderness or of Moses' leadership, both. God's wrath flares against the people. He releases some kind of a scourge that decimates the Israelite ranks. Moses intercedes in two separate instances after God actually threatens to wipe out the entire population and to begin anew with Moses. And then God relents. Now, the two most notable episodes of Israelite insubordination are the mistranslated story of the spies, who report the fabulous bounty of the land but despair of conquering it. Then they seek to storm it without divine authorization. And then the story of the rebellion led by Korah. Restlessness under Moses' rule is so epidemic that even Miriam and Aaron are affected by it, at one point resentfully rebelling against their brother. This is not what we think of when we think of a journey. When we think of a journey, great stories come to mind. The Epic of Gilgamesh, considered the oldest known book. The Odyssey. Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. The Wizard of Oz. Wooden ships on the water, very free and easy. Easy, you know, the way it's supposed to be. Silver people on the shoreline, let us be. Talking about very free and easy. Somehow, my friends, this journey just never seems to be so easy. This generation that cannot free itself from a slave mentality that it brought with it from Egypt also constitutes the beginnings of a people meant to realize a grand historical destiny. Now, the journey in literature can be the experience of an individual or a group. In the book of Numbers, it's both. It's the people of Israel's journey from Sinai to the border of Canaan, from the site of the establishment of the covenant to the place where it's to be fulfilled. And it's Moses' journey from Mount Sinai to Mount, Nebo, from the place where he has seen God to the place where he is to die. Now, one must read the story of Numbers with a sense of what's pictured. It's this great mass of people, an entire nation in movement, with a visible miracle cloud of, the calling, the cloud of fire, and the miraculous feeding via manna happening in their presence at all times over a span of nearly 40 years. It's the only age in the Bible in which miracles are a daily fact of life. The wilderness depiction conveys two quite different realities. On the one hand, the wilderness years constitute a kind of ideal. The people's life is orderly, protected, the closest to God in history. It's a period of incubation, nurturing. Everything's provided: food, water, direction. The miraculous is the norm. At the same time, the wilderness is depicted as terrible and frightening, and that's the idea we still have in our own minds. Conditions are bad. The environment is hostile. There is rebellion from within and fighting with people all along the way. There are power struggles and there is fear. And this is pictured as having been almost entirely avoidable, a fate that has come upon the people for having rejected the opportunity to enter the land. Now, in the earthly events and in the cosmic aspect of both continuous and situational miracles, the wilderness generation is like no other. And so this book that tells its story is correspondingly unique. It is the only book dealing with one generation alone. It's also a book that has one of the 10 preordained incidents determined at the time of creation, and perhaps one of the most interesting in the entire Torah. A brilliant centerpiece, appearing in the midst of this epic journey, among the citations of all kinds of archaic poetry, is the Oracle of Balaam, which follows the story of Balaam and his she-ass, tracing a shrewd network of analogies to it. The story has often been characterized as a folk tale, and there are no other instances of talking animals in the historical narratives of the Bible, the only other candidate, of course, being the serpent in Genesis in the garden story. But especially because, according to prevalent preconceptions, there is no humor in the Bible, and there is no room for humor in the Bible. But it should be noted that this story is quite funny and quite ironic. The humor serves the purpose of monotheistic satire. And it's all about this professional seer with independent powers to curse blessed. Now, Balaam, the celebrated visionary, cannot see the sword-wielding divine messenger who is plainly visible to his ass. And he's reduced to fuming frustration, engaging in an angry argument with his beast of burden. Balaam plays the role of the ass whose eyes and mouth are opened by God. It's really incredible. Yeah. But don't take the story, don't take the book, don't take the numbers too seriously. This is not about debating the numbers, because what ends up happening is people say, hey, there's 603,550 people, tribal people in the census, and then you add women and you add old people and children. It's got to be over 2 million people. Don't debate the numbers. And that's what people get locked up in. They get into this debate. Instead, it's about recognizing the significance of the numbers to the Torah and its story. Now, historically, only a portion of the Israelites may have had the experience of slavery in Egypt, but all of Israel came to see the experience as their own. For the Torah, it is important that the entire people of Israel be seen as present at Mount Sinai. And as you undertake your journey, my friends, think about the things that transpire in your life. And I'm often asked to, retell the story about the philosophy professor who stood before his class and he picks up this large empty jar and proceeds to fill it with golf balls. He then asked the students if the jar was full, and they agreed that it was. He then picks up a box of pebbles and pours them into the jar. He shakes the jar lightly, and the pebbles roll into the open areas between the golf balls. Now he asked the students again if the jar was full, and again they agreed that it was. Next, he picks up a box of sand and pours it into the jar. Now, the sand fills up everything else, and he asks once more if the jar is full, and once more he's met with an undisputed yes. Well, to finish, he pulls out a bottle of water from underneath the table where he's sitting, and he pours the entire contents in the jar, effectively filling all of the empty space between the sand, and the class is laughing. Now, the professor says, I want you to recognize that this jar represents your life. The golf balls are the important things: your family, your children, your health, your friends, and your passions. If everything else was lost, and only they remained, your life would still be full. The pebbles are the other things that matter, like your job, your house, your car. The sand is everything else, the small stuff. Now, if you put the sand into the jar first, there is no room for the pebbles or the golf balls. The same goes for life. If you spend all your time and energy on the small stuff, you will never have room for the things that are important to you. And we have to learn from these things, friends. Pay attention to the things that are critical to your happiness. Spend time with your children. Spend time with your parents. Visit your grandparents. Take your spouse out to dinner. Celebrate your passion. There will always be time to clean the house and mow the lawn. Take care of the golf balls first, the things that really matter. Set your priorities. The rest is just sand. In the fury of the moment, I can see the master's hand in every leaf that trembles, in every grain of sand. Now, when one of the students asked about the drink, the professor smiled and said, the drink just shows that no matter how full your life may seem, there's always room for a drink with a friend. The world is sacred, and so is everything in it, and so is your journey through life, my friends. Express your gratitude. Light a candle, make a wish, celebrate your life and the lives of those you love. Live free, be free, and honor your freedom. Be well, be happy, and be blessed. Share and honor the light. And all who live in the light and continue to shine. Continue to send everybody you know goodwill and love. Pray for peace, for freedom for everyone, and then to terror and hatred. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All good children go to heaven. And remember, friends, we are a community. We learn together. We celebrate each other. We love each other. Thank you all. Love you for joining me. See you all next time. Wishes do come true. Bless you all. Shabbat Shalom. Take care. Bye.